On this week, it's a huge weekend in the ACC. We've got a major rivalry, a Friday night primetime game, and a top 5 showdown between two undefeated teams at the top of the conference. We're going to cover it all tonight on Playbook. I am Chris Clark. Let's get this thing started, shall we? Now, we've been looking forward to this one for just a little while now. A top 5 matchup in South Bend when top-ranked Clemson hits the road to take on the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, ranked number 4, by the way. WSBA's Pete Yannity joins us now to take a closer look at how the Tigers are getting ready. And, Pete, we cannot talk about anything else before we talk about that quarterback situation here. Trevor Lawrence is out for the second week, meaning DJ, well, I'm going to let you tell me exactly how we're supposed to pronounce this because I've been butchering it all week. What can we expect from him in this one?
You in America have been, and I got to be honest with you, I'm still very careful when I say it. DJ Uiagalelei, and that's about as close, I think, as I can get to the right pronunciation. Very mature kid, to a certain extent, probably a blessing in disguise for Clemson, that if he had to make a debut as a true freshman, it came last week at home, albeit in a tough game, but one that he and his team weathered the storm. I think you'll see them try to probably expand the package a little bit more as much as they can. He is an incredibly talented player, came to Clemson with the same credentials that Trevor Lawrence did, is just about as mature, I think, in my opinion, in terms of the interviews we've done with him, as Lawrence was as a freshman. Seems to have the same football maturity and football sense that Lawrence did then, and isn't all that far off now, since he's been here since back in January. This is a program that throughout the season has been trying to be more vertical, minus, of course, T. Higgins, who left early to go to the NFL with the Bengals, and Justin Ross, who was not a part of the plan this year because of his very serious neck injury. But they have continued to go over top of folks when they can with Amari Rodgers. They've used their tight ends, Braden Galloway, and lately Davis Allen, more in that regard. But I really think a guy who's got an absolute cannon of an arm, just like Lawrence does, you'll see them try to challenge a secondary Notre Dame that's very good with veteran players back there like McLeod at a corner and Crawford at a safety. But I truly believe they'll try to be more vertical to try to keep Notre Dame honest there so that Travis Etienne can do his thing in between the tackles or coming out of the backfield. He's become a very good weapon in the passing game as well.
DJ Uiagalelei, I'll definitely make sure to practice. I promise. I promise. Now, Clemson managed to get a win last week.
You put a W sound kind of at the front, very quietly. Uiagalelei. There's kind of an ooh, but there's also, yeah, it's, I guess the U and the I make a W. That's the best I can tell.
You know what? I'll take your word for it, and I'll be sure to practice because I think we're going to be seeing a whole heck of a lot more of him. And, you know, Clemson managed to get that win over Boston College last week, like you said. But they were down 15 points at the half, and, I mean, it didn't look exactly like that dominant force that we have seen as of late. What do they need to do to fix that, to get that win against a much tougher opponent here coming up in Notre Dame?
Well, and you also have to keep in mind, sure, they were down by a couple of scores at the half. At the same time, they were going in, put it on the ground, and it turned into a 97-yard touchdown just, you know, right away on that same play the other way. So the halftime score deceiving. But to your point, in the big picture, Boston College did come out and punch them as well as anyone has this year, better than Miami or Virginia, which came into Death Valley probably considered a little bit higher level of play than what Boston College was when they came in last Saturday. I think it was a matter of freshman quarterback and the offense around him getting used to each other. Chris, I think a bigger story in this game remains the fact, and you can also point to it for the Boston College game, is that Tyler Davis, a really good defensive lineman who had a great freshman year, has been injury-plagued during his sophomore year. Dabo Swinney said on Wednesday night he's out for the game Saturday. Mike Jones, one of their key linebackers, a first-year starter, had a pick-6 against Syracuse. He's out for the game, and of course they're already missing James Skalski, who is not only their best linebacker, but probably also their emotional leader, their quarterback on defense, just like Lawrence is the quarterback on offense. So they're missing 3 defensive starters. That, to me, although the quarterback story is a huge one, is certainly storyline 1A going into this game, because for all the talent they have around those guys and on the depth chart, those are 3 really key pieces that they will not have on the field in South Bend.
That would be devastating for any other team but Clemson, because I guess they just look at the team in Death Valley as a monolith of greatness down there, and it's a testament, I guess, to what Dabo's been able to build the last couple of years down there as well. And one last question before we let you go. I know you got stuff to do here. Just Clemson's 3rd road game of the season. How's being being away from home, if I can get this out here, going to affect their performance, if at all, because they seem to travel pretty well?
I think under normal times you might say, well, true freshman quarterback, now he's got to go on the road in front of 80,000 in South Bend, capacity crowd, most of them wearing blue and gold or green. I think under the circumstances, the times, home or away, have seemed very similar to these players. And you could probably say that about any team on the FBS level or those who are playing in FCS as well. I don't think the home field advantage will be there for Notre Dame like it normally would be when you consider the advantages they would probably have, at least early on, with a true freshman at quarterback. And then again, DJ comes across as a very mature person, but again has such a football savvy about him. I don't know that it would have been that big of a deal. From a team standpoint, you know, you've got guys now in the program. If you're in this program for multiple years, you've averaged playing between 14 and 15 games a season. You're used to going to all kinds of different places with big crowds. Even neutral sites have very electric atmospheres when this team goes and plays, as opposed to going to a bowl game that might only be half full. So the veterans in this team have seen pretty much every experience.
Thank you, Pete. Always learn something new talking to you. Be sure not to miss a snap in this one. I've been waiting for this one for a while. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right, now whoever wins this one is going to be all alone at the top of the ACC standings. But as WTTV's Chris Widlick reports, Notre Dame head coach Brian Kelly is reminding his players that the season isn't over after this game. No, it's not over, win or lose.
It might not have all the luster the college football world was hoping for when the schedule came out, but it's pretty darn close. Top-ranked Clemson without their star quarterback and number 4 Notre Dame, both perfect, connect for the first time since the 2018 playoff semifinal. But don't tell Irish head coach Brian Kelly that this is the biggest game of the year. It is, until there's another one.
You're going to get opportunities like this, and you want to win these games, there's no doubt. But we can't be overly emotional about this football game and lose sight of the fact that we've got 5 more games to play as well. I mean, there's a lot of football still left out. So we can't empty the tank and say, hey, we beat Clemson, we've arrived. No, we haven't.
You can't hide it. You know, it is a big game. You know, a lot of people want to say it's just another game. Well, it is just another game, but, you know, you don't want to hide the elephant in the room. It is something that can increase our value, and especially to where we want to go. You know, the national championship is always at the forefront of our minds.
This Irish team was built for games like this. Speed on both sides of the ball and a devastating defense set to face a young, untested quarterback. If Ian Book can hit some plays in a passing game that's been spotty this fall, they've got a great opportunity to stay perfect and stake their claim to ACC frontrunner. Reporting on the Fighting Irish for Playbook, I'm Chris Widlick.
Thank you, Chris. Miami Hurricanes are back after a week off and taking on NC State in a rare Friday night game. First, actually, I skipped over something. Kickoff 7:30 p.m. Clemson Tigers and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish on that one there. How could I miss that one? I figured everybody already knew that was a primetime game. Anyway, moving on. The Miami Hurricanes are back after a week off and taking on NC State in a rare Friday night matchup this weekend at primetime. The Hurricanes looking for win number 5 in the ACC after surviving a scare against Virginia on a rainy, sloppy night in South Florida 2 weeks back. The Canes taking particular care to game plan for NC State's 3-3-5 defense. Tony Gibson, that NC State defensive coordinator, had great success with it against Miami when he was coaching back at West Virginia. The Mountaineers took on the Canes in that Orlando Bowl a few years back. I mean, for an entire half, the Canes failed to gain a yard. True, look it up. Coach Diaz explained just what makes facing the odd stack so tough to get a handle on.
There's a threat of maximum coverage, and there's a threat of maximum pressure on every play. And one thing they've always done a really nice job is they're not afraid to bring the house on 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, anywhere on the field. Then they can just, you know, they can bring a couple different pressures. They can, I mean, there's just a lot of things that they can throw at you. So you got to have a lot of great communication on your offense line and backs. And then you got to check because they're able to mix up some coverages down the field where you can make some mistakes if you get a wrong read.
On the flip side, NC State getting healthy after a week off with a handful of players who were out injured, set against return. They were set to return. God, I am having problems tonight. They were set to return this week against Miami. WNCN's Todd Gibson is covering the Wolfpack. We're getting ready for a Friday night showdown. Todd?
College football on a Friday. For years, high school coaches were livid at the college game for encroaching on the sanctity of Friday night lights. But this year is a bit different. When Miami and NC State meet tomorrow here at Carter Finley Stadium, the Wolfpack and Hurricanes will play pretty much unopposed.
In my second or third year, we had to play UNC on a Friday night, and the North Carolina High School Coaches Association was very unhappy about that for the reasons you mentioned. And I don't think any of us prefer that. You know, obviously the television contract we're in demands that for the volume of games that we need and the TV. If you ask a college coach, Saturdays are meant for college football and Fridays are meant for high school football. But as you know, that's not always something that we have control over.
It feels great. It just feels crazy because I was just thinking back on this day and thinking back on how big of a game this is going to be.
If we would have played at home earlier in the season, I don't think it would have been as much as an impact as everyone saw. Like in the first game, there was barely anybody there. And then as we saw against Duke, there's a decent amount of people there. So I feel like having that home stretch towards the end of the season, the way it timed up with, you know, regulations and stuff like that decreasing, I think it helped us out a lot.
Coming off a bye week, NC State is getting healthy for the stretch run, which will see them play 4 of its final 5 regular season games here at home. Following the Wolfpack in Raleigh, I'm Todd Gibson.
Thank you, Todd. Here's the best part. You can get your college football weekend started early. NC State, Miami kicking off tomorrow night at 7:30. No high school football? No problem. And the battle for the Victory Bell is Saturday at noon as Duke hosts North Carolina at Wallace Wade Stadium. WNCN's Alyssa Ray joins us live. And Alyssa, the Heels already have not one but 2 losses, which I didn't expect, neither of which are good. I doubt they're overlooking the Blue Devils. Safe to say?
Yeah, Chris, if we've learned anything watching UNC so far this season, it's that they've stumbled over teams they should not have. Teams on paper they should have beaten. The Heels fell to Virginia on Saturday, and their previous loss was to Florida State. Both teams only had 1 win heading into the game against North Carolina. UNC ranks 5th nationally in total offense, averaging 532 yards per game. The defense, however, has taken the brunt of the criticism in the losses, and while it's still dealing with some injuries, Jay Bateman has a no-excuses mentality and knows his guys need to catch up to the offense.
It's been really inconsistent. You know, I think that we've had 3 games where we've been really good and 3 games where we've been really poor. And I think the 3 games we've been poor, I think when you go back and you watch them, right, you see us, you know, fundamentally being poor.
Their team, to me, is very much like a situation we had with Virginia and Florida State. They're better teams than their record. And if Duke hadn't turned the ball over so many times, their record would be much, much better. So we've got our hands full, and we got to play good on Saturday to have a chance to win.
Bateman talking about that inconsistency with the defense. UNC held NC State to just 34 yards rushing and gave up 210 rushing yards against UVA. So definitely a point of emphasis on that side of the ball.
All right, there was a couple things I was sure of. Death taxes and UNC running the football. On offense, what happened? We talked about how good that Heels run game has been. I mean, the Cavaliers did an incredible job containing them.
All right, I'll own up to it, Chris. Last week I said that Michael Carter and Javonte Williams would both break 100 yards rushing, as they did against NC State and Virginia Tech, and boy, was I wrong. The Hoos held Carolina to just 93 rushing yards, so the Duke defense is probably thinking to stop this team, they have to stop the run.
Definitely thinking that, and we'll see if they can do just that there. Alyssa Ray, thank you for joining us once again in studio, breaking this thing. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
And after a week off, those Duke Blue Devils, they came out of their bye week and just dropped the hammer on the Charlotte 49ers. Sure, they're a Conference USA team, and yeah, it's not like they beat an ACC team, but still, stay with me. I mean, it was the right time to get right with the rest of their conference schedule coming up. They did it through the air, chewed up a lot of ground yards as well, ground special teams. I mean, they were all over the place. Defensively, they locked down and locked up Will Hilley's offense all night long. Complete team win. And they needed it. For facing them as one of the best offenses in all of the land when they got it going. UNC has been running over people literally and figuratively all year. Even in the losses, I mean, they put up video game type numbers. It all begins with that Tar Heel quarterback Sam Howell and his ability to call, execute, and when he needs to, extend plays so guys can get open for him.
He's got a lot of savvy and poise. He's had that when he was in high school his whole career. So he's a very accurate, dangerous passer. So when a quarterback like that, and he's a good athlete, he can run, he's strong. When a quarterback like that gets in space, you have to stay in coverage. And what you're telling your team is you got to rally. You've got to rally. You've got to have every D lineman, anybody that's not in coverage, try to close the gap as quickly as they can.
And, of course, this game is more than just wins and losses. It's a rivalry game. It's for the bell. I mean, since 2010, each team has won the trophy 5 times. Most recently, the Tar Heels won it last season, and we all know how that game was decided. Crushing for Duke fans. This isn't just another Saturday in the fall for the Blue Devils. No, this is one they really want and got to have.
I think last year, you know, that really hurt us a lot. You know, with the way it ended, I think it's definitely, you know, just added that extra fuel to a rivalry game that's already super intense.
It's a rivalry game, so emotions are always high. And last year, the way that we lost the Victory Bell was tough, and I think we've taken it to heart, and that is our extra motivation. We plan on getting that Victory Bell back because, you know, it belongs in Durham. It belongs at Duke University, and we plan on getting it back, and I think that's our extra motivation.
We're going to see who takes home the Victory Bell this year after this one gets started at noon on Saturday in Durham. That's going to be a battle, man. Moving on here, Virginia Tech, the only ACC team with a non-conference game this weekend. But don't overlook their opponents. They're definitely not. Liberty, quick. Anybody know the mascot? Anybody? Shout it out. Anybody? No? The Flames. They're 6-0 on the season. Just cracked the top 25. WFXR's Jermaine Farrell covering the Hokies. Jermaine.
After suffering through arguably the worst game of his career in the Virginia Tech football team's loss at Wake Forest, Hendon Hooker responded with arguably his best. As the Hokies traveled last Saturday to Louisville to play the Cardinals, Hooker rushed for 3 touchdowns. He completed 10 of 10 passes for 183 yards to lift the Hokies to a 42-35 victory over Louisville on Saturday in an ACC game played at Cardinal Stadium. Now, with the win, the Hokies they moved to 4-2 overall, 4-2 in the ACC. Behind Hooker, the Hokies jumped all over the Cardinals right from the start, opening up a 21-0 lead, and then they scored on 4 consecutive possessions in the second half to pull away. Now, here are the stars of the Louisville game for Virginia Tech. Khalil Herbert doing his thing again, rushing for 147 yards, and he ran for a TD. Hendon Hooker, he rushed for 68 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also passed for 183 yards, and he was a perfect 10, as in 10 of 10 passing. Meanwhile, defensive back Shamari Connor was named the ACC Defensive Back of the Week for the 2nd time this season. Tied for the team lead with 9 tackles at Louisville and registered a pass breakup. He recorded his first interception of the season, 1 of 3 for Tech's defensive back unit. And for the 2nd time this season, Brock Hoffman was named the co-offensive lineman of the week for the ACC. He started at center and helped the Hokies rush for 283 yards and 3 TDs. The Hokies averaged 5.5 yards per contest in the game at Louisville. Now on to the game at hand. The Virginia Tech Hokies returned from a 2-game road trip to start a 2-game homestand. Tech will have their only non-conference game on the season. They played a 25th ranked Liberty Flames, and Liberty is not a pushover. They entered the game with a 6-0 record, and they are on an 8-game winning streak, currently the 2nd longest active winning streak in the country behind ACC foe Notre Dame. And Virginia Tech head coach Justin Fuente knows Saturday's game will be a challenge for the Hokies.
Liberty is ranked in the top 25, deservedly so. Offensively, they're averaging 40 points a game. They beat the brakes off one ACC team already. Malik Willis is phenomenal, running it, throwing it. They've got running backs that are big and powerful. They've got some that are small and fast. They've got wideouts. I mean, they are putting tons of points on the board. They're incredibly explosive, and doing a really good job in the other 2 phases of the game. It's just, to me, when I watch him play, Malik Willis stands out. I mean, this young man is he's a fantastic football player. So it's going to be a tremendous challenge. We've got a ranked opponent here at home, and we'll have to have a great week of preparation heading into Liberty.
Now, here's a side note to this game. This is the 2nd meeting between the Flames and the Hokies. Now, the first one was back on September 2nd, 2016 at Lane Stadium. It was the first game in the Justin Fuente era at Virginia Tech. Coach Fuente got the party started with a 36-13 win. Covering the Virginia Tech Hokies, I'm Jermaine Farrell.
Thank you, Jermaine. Always exciting talking to Jermaine. Coach Fuente is going to be hoping to replicate some of that success from his first win when the Hokies kick off at noon on Saturday in Blacksburg. And the Pittsburgh Panthers are coming off their bye week, rested and ready to start the second half of their season. They're also going to be short one of their best players, as Paris Ford has decided to opt out of the rest of his time at Pittsburgh. Ford had 3 picks and 45 tackles for the Panthers, who have dropped 4 straight following the 3-0 start, heading into a visit to Florida State. Ford is a second high-profile departure for Pitt's defense, by the way. Defensive tackle Jalen Twyman, an All-American in 2019, decided over the summer to take the season off and prepare for the NFL draft. Seems odd, though, Ford would opt out now, halfway through. Now, much more likely he didn't like the direction of the team losing 4 straight. Here's head coach Narduzzi on Ford. Let's just say leaving college football.
Paris is a tremendous football player, a tremendous person, a guy that got a lot of respect for, and we appreciate all the efforts he's put in here in his really 3.5, 4 years, and really for the 6 years that we've known him, through the whole recruiting process. We wish him all the best, best in his endeavors as he moves on through this, this football world and the rest of his life.
Look for Brandon Hill to line up in Ford's old safety spot, by the way. This week they will need him as well when the Panthers face off against Florida State, like we said. It's going to be the first time in 38 years Pittsburgh has played at Florida State. To put this in perspective, the Panthers have not visited Tallahassee since the '82 season when quarterback Dan Marino directed a 37-17 victory over Bobby Bowden's Seminoles. That's taking it back. All right, back to the current teams. The Noles' current quarterback is the man Pitt coach Pat Narduzzi is most concerned about.
Travis, Jordan Travis, number 13, is a football player. I really like that guy. He's the key to their offense. They'd like to run it. He'll throw the RPOs. We'll see the tee shoots. They'd like to copycat what they see on tape. So we've worked, a ton of different stuff that we've seen through the year. Anything that's hurt us. Actually, the last 3 years we've worked on just looking at, we've had 2 weeks to prepare for them. And again, I'm sure we'll see stuff that we didn't know we'd see. But they found their quarterback in Travis.
Noles quarterback Jordan Travis is going to hope to be refreshed and rested after the team enjoyed a week off. WMVB's Courtney Mims is covering Florida State. Courtney?
The 2-4 Florida State Seminoles got a breather this week with a bye, but so did their opponent, the Pittsburgh Panthers. And Saturday will be the first time in 38 years these two have met up in Tallahassee for a matchup. For the Noles, though, the bye week came at a great time, especially for their starting quarterback, Jordan Travis. Travis has been banged up for almost the entire season, and so he needed this week to heal up and be ready for this Saturday, especially since his offense has to go up against a really talented Panthers defense. Florida State's offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham said Pitt's defense is the most physical one they will face this season. It's something that will be challenging for this FSU offense, who's still trying to get into a groove on the field.
It's an impressive defensive unit. You look at them; I think they're leading the country, or one of the tops in the country, in creating pressure to the quarterback and quarterback sacks. It all starts for them with their defensive front and forcing unit with their linebackers. I think they do a great job. You're going to see a lot of man coverage, a lot of one-on-one opportunities.
Another offensive star for the Noles is questionable for this Saturday's game, wide receiver Tamorion Terry. He's missed the last 2 games due to a minor knee surgery, but was listed as a starter on the team's depth chart this week. Norvell said whether or not he plays will be a game-time decision for them. Reporting on FSU, I'm Courtney Mims.
Thank you, Courtney. Jordan Travis and Pitt QB Kenny Pickett might not be Dan Marino, but they'll still be looking to put up the points when this one kicks off Saturday at 4 o'clock. And the Boston College Eagles looking to keep their record above 500 this week when they travel to Syracuse to take on the Orange. Now, the Eagles are 1-3 on the road, undefeated at home, by the way, and even though the Carrier Dome will not be full, it's still a nasty, tough place to play. Just asked Clemson a while back, actually. Speaking of Clemson, the Eagles gave them a good run in Death Valley before dropping the game by 1 score. But they are steadily improving with the way Syracuse has struggled stopping the run the last few weeks. I'd expect Boston College to try and get that part of their offense going early and often. If the Orange have no answers, keep it up, man. The Boston College pass rush, though, it is getting each and every time out a little bit better, so you know the pressure is coming. But on who is the question. Tommy DeVito is going to be out. Syracuse has been playing Rex Culpepper for the last couple of weeks. but there's actually a possibility that might go with a true freshman. Marks the second week in a row. BC might have to face a quarterback that doesn't have a lot of film there to check out. So how worried are you about that, Coach?
You know, I dealt with this a bunch, whether it was in the NFL or, I mean, you watch 15 or you watch 17, and then I believe 15 is the kid you're talking about. He did a nice job at the end of the game. He came in, threw a couple passes, threw a touchdown pass, and I think he's 7 for 7 on the year. It's their scheme. Again, you know, you have literally 3 days of practice, so it's not like they're all of a sudden going to come out with a whole new offense. So we watch what they do. We try to look at him the best we can, and we just got to do our job.
And Syracuse is going to be down another key defender on Saturday as defensive back Trill Williams announced that he is opting out and will declare for the NFL draft. Williams is a junior out of Yonkers, New York, has played exceptionally well on a defense that otherwise has kind of struggled. This season he has 24 tackles and a 90-yard interception return for a touchdown against Georgia Tech a while back. Andre Sisco, Syracuse's other NFL-caliber defender, like Williams, declared for the NFL draft in the middle of the season. And as WSYR's Stephen Fonte reports, that makes this week's matchup against the tricky offense even tougher for the Orange.
Well, with Tuesday's election, teams across the country had the day off. Dino Babers added a Monday night practice to make up for it. So Syracuse isn't behind in terms of preparation, but it is time to ramp things up with the game plan with Boston College set to visit on Saturday. The Eagles might be the surprise team in the ACC so far this season. BC is coming off a 34-28 heartbreaking loss to #1 Clemson, a game which they led by 18 points. At 4-3, the Eagles already have wins over the likes of Duke and Pittsburgh, two teams that have beaten the Orange by double digits. But this isn't your typical matchup with Boston College. The Eagles are throwing the ball a lot more in 2020 thanks to the addition of Notre Dame transfer Phil Jurkovec at quarterback. It's quite the change from the ground and pound mentality that we're used to seeing out of the Eagles.
Their team has really kind of flipped sides. They're really throwing the ball a lot more with the transfer from Notre Dame. And, you know, in fact, they've got a bunch of transfers that's all became eligible. So it's almost like they're a little bit different team. They have the ability to run the football. They've got big guys that are still there. A lot of offensive linemen are still there. And that tailback that still did really well against us. So it's definitely a concern.
Rex Culpepper remains listed as the starting quarterback on SU's depth chart. That was to be expected, but don't be surprised if we see freshman Jacobian Morgan make another appearance after the success he had to close out the Wake Forest game. Covering Syracuse, I'm Stephen Fonte.
Thank you, Steve. We're going to see if Syracuse can pick up just their second ACC win of the year, or if BC will move into the top half of the standings when they kick off at 2 on Saturday up in the Carrier Dome. We've got injuries, illnesses, rivalries, and a top 5 matchup to cap it all off this week in the ACC. That's making it a tough weekend to predict. So let's bring on Jason Logan from Covers.com for a little bit of help. And Jason, let's start with the big game of the week. We're talking Clemson and Notre Dame. No Trevor Lawrence for the Tigers. And after seeing Clemson struggle without him against Boston College, how much does his absence impact the odds for this game?
Yeah, so sportsbooks, they'll set what they call game of the year odds before the season comes out. And some sportsbooks did it and some sportsbooks didn't this year because of the whole COVID uncertainty. But the ones that did, they had Clemson -7.5 back in the back in the spring. But with Lawrence out due to that positive COVID test, they reopened this game Clemson -4. So you're looking at about a 3.5 point value to his worth on the spread. That was Sunday night, and then money came in big and pushed us back up to -7, actually. And then it came back on the Irish and down to around -5.5, which is what we see right now. Like you said, we saw Clemson struggle against Boston College, but they got to be better on both sides of the ball. They can't turn the ball over, specifically with Notre Dame having a much more potent offense than the Eagles did, and they got to do much better on defense because this Notre Dame team is probably playing its best football of the season. The rushing game has been great. The offensive line is dominant, and Ian Book looks very, very good in the passing game too. So they're coming into this game with some great momentum. Notre Dame can run that ball, and that can take the TOP and suck some of the energy out of Clemson's offense. And I think that's where you need to stop them, and because they can still score without Lawrence under center. Clemson's going to want to avoid the turnovers. They got to take pressure off the passing game as well too. So I think we're going to see a lot of Etche and a lot of this running game as well too. The total is down to 51.5, so there could be some value with the under.
Now Miami visits North Carolina State, which has had to scramble a bit at quarterback due to an injury to starter Devin Leary. Can the Wolfpack keep pace with the Canes is the question.
Yeah, so NC State, they've had a week off in between the loss to North Carolina and playing Miami, which is great. It's allowing Bailey Hockman to get some time under center, get some time with the first teamers, get some confidence under him here. And he looked pretty good in the second half versus UNC. He had 215 yards passing, a touchdown and an interception. But the turnovers just doomed NC State in that game. I believe they had 7 in that game. And you aren't going to win any games, no matter who you're playing, when you're coughing up the ball at that rate. Now you have Miami and the infamous turnover chain. They're averaging 1.5 takeaways per game here. The spread open Canes -9. It's now up to -10.5. NC State has been a solid bet in 2020 so far. They've surprised with their performance. They've gone 4-2 ATS, but that gap in QB play is very, very notable for this game.
And the football edition of the Tobacco Road rivalry takes place in North Carolina, visiting Duke here. And we saw the Tar Heels just trip up just a little bit in Virginia last week. And can they bounce back versus the Blue Devils is the question.
Yeah, and last week we talked about UNC's kind of historic troubles with Virginia. And here we are. Now, North Carolina, they opened -9.5, and they've jumped up through the key number of 10 and are now as high as -10.5. So bettors believe in a UNC bounce back this week. Tar Heels 5-1 ATS in their last 6 games, coming off a loss. However, when we look at this rivalry, the underdog has been the smart bet. They've covered in 6 of the last 8 matchups between UNC and Duke. Now, the Blue Devils, they have some confidence and a little momentum. They got to blow up Charlotte 53-19 on Halloween. This is a Duke team that can put up a lot of points, and we've seen UNC get into a share of shootouts so far this season. The big thing for UNC is not falling behind early. North Carolina trailed UVA at the break, and they have an average margin of just +1.5 points in first halves compared to +8.7 in second half. So they kind of dig themselves a hole and then have to get out of it. Those slow starts have plagued them too, and we're seeing it with their betting results. They're only 3-3 ATS on the year here too. So I would be a little cautious of UNC, considering that this line has gone over that key number of 10, and it's now at 10.5.
As always, thank you for crunching the numbers so we don't have to. Thanks, Jason. Enjoy the games. Louisville was scheduled to travel to Virginia for a primetime showdown this week, but a COVID-19 outbreak in the Cardinal squad is forcing this one to be postponed. But there is good news. Game's going to be pushed back just a week and kick off next Saturday afternoon. But, just because the Cardinals and Cavaliers are off this week doesn't mean we want to just move on here. WRIC's Natalie Calabit is covering the Cavs. But first, WEHT's Randall Parmley has an update on when the Cardinals could return to action. Randall?
Well, the Louisville Cardinals have been hit hard by COVID. The Cards were without 9 players who had tested positive in last weekend's loss to Virginia Tech. And on Wednesday night, the program announced this Saturday's game against Virginia will be postponed until November the 14th. 15 players and staff members have tested positive, so now Louisville is shutting down all football activities indefinitely. Athletic Director Vince Tyree says the Cards will now undergo multiple rounds of testing over the weekend.
We're certainly hopeful that the results allow us to get back quickly to practice. But if we see, a spread inside or outside the locker room, we may have to extend that period and that we plan to pause. So, it's we'll touch and go. We don't have anything definitive to date on when that is, but we're hopeful that, if Friday and Sunday go well, we may be back in meetings as early as Sunday evening or back Monday.
And as far as scheduling goes, this really won't have much of an impact for Louisville. They will simply have a bye week this week and then hopefully play Virginia next week. Covering the Louisville Cardinals, I'm Randall Parmley.
The Virginia Cavaliers picked up their biggest win of the season last week. UVA knocked off number 15 North Carolina at Scott Stadium 44-41. It was a night to remember for Bronco Mendenhall's team. The Cavaliers built a 3-touchdown lead and hung on for their second conference win.
Really happy for our team, our coaches, everyone associated with the program. I was really impressed with how hard our team fought, how long they fought, and the collective effort.
Virginia's win is just another example of the parity around the league. 9 teams have lost between 2 and 4 games, and that makes every matchup a challenge.
It is just simply as cliche-based as possible. It is really just this week and this opponent, and however we can get our team prepared to make enough plays to win the game.
Next up for Virginia is a home game against Louisville. Mendenhall says the Cardinals will present a major challenge to his defense.
So they're very dynamic at the running back spot, at the quarterback spot, at the receiver spot, and it's a run-based offense, so play action and bootlegs and then max protection and throwing downfield.
Covering Virginia, I'm Natalie Calabat.
Great stuff, Natalie. Thank you. Two other teams had scheduled bye weeks this week. Georgia Tech is one of them. They're going to try to regroup after a loss to Notre Dame. The Yellow Jackets host Pitt next week, and Wake Forest heads into their weekend off as winners of 4 straight. The Demon Deacons will take a short road trip over to UNC when they return to action next Saturday. And quick, the only teams on a longer winning streak than Wake Forest right now, Clemson and Notre Dame, if you can believe it. And we know either the Tigers or the Irish have to lose this week. WGHP's Danny Harnden talked to the Deacons about keeping the momentum rolling when they return. Danny?
After a rough start of the season, the Wake Forest football team, well, they've been on a roll. They went 4-0 in the month of October. In fact, their first unbeaten October since 2007. But they're on a bye week, a chance to catch their breath.
This season is different than any other season. And even though you say, well, geez, you know, it's the end of October and you've only played 6 games, our players have been at it since early July. No breaks, you can't go home, no social life. And I just think they need to charge the batteries a little bit.
Yes, the Deacons have turned it around after starting out with 2 straight defeats. Some impressive stats here. Wake is averaging 37 points a game, and quarterback Sam Hartman has set a school record of 189 straight passes without an interception. And speaking of turnovers, Wake has committed just 1 all season. That's amazing. And the defense, much improved since back in September.
We started off kind of slow. We had a lot of expectations riding on us. I don't feel like we completely stepped up to the plate the first few games, but recently, we've been playing really good football.
There were a lot of questions about the defense. You know, for those guys to, you know, believe in the staff and believe in the system and say we've got a problem, we have to fix it, and not just put our hands in the air and say it's 2020, we're doomed, to me is very encouraging.
When the Deacons get back from the bye week, it's really, really tough. 5 games in 5 weeks, a schedule that includes North Carolina, Miami, and Notre Dame. Reporting on Wake Forest football, I'm Danny Harnden.
Great stuff as always, Danny. Thank you. And thanks for joining us for Playbook. Remember, you can catch a new episode every Thursday night at 7. And until then, get out there and watch some football, everybody. I'll see you all next Thursday.